Good morning. This is Angela with Parkhurst Permaculture. I'm sitting in the backyard here in my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden, and it is early May and we are in Zone 8B. It is an unusually cool and rainy May so far, so things are a little bit behind, and actually have a video coming out on that hopefully tomorrow. I wanted to quickly address today a meme that kind of made the rounds this morning and I thought was really interesting. And also maybe deserves a little bit of a deeper dive into it. So this meme came up where it's talking about the potential in permaculture. The garden that is featured in the bottom half of the meme belongs to Val Herman in, I think, Jacksonville area in Florida. So a really, really unique and different kind of ecosystem that I have up here in Portland, Oregon. Val is way down here. And she did a similar thing to my project here, which is transform kind of a normal urban/suburban, depleted soil grass yard into an abundant permaculture oasis, so to speak, full of productive food and fiber and medicine and enjoyment and habitat. And the meme was saying, was talking up all of the potentials of permaculture, all of the great things about it. At the very end of the meme, it emphasized that permaculture is low effort. Now, because I have no chill and I can't help myself, I immediately replied to this post and said, look, I've been doing permaculture for almost 23 years on my current property. This is year 14. Permaculture is not low effort. It's not low effort. Let's do a really good job of accurately portraying what permaculture is like, because we don't want to romanticize it and we don't want to talk it up in a way that is unrealistic. We want to help folks be set up for success. That's a big theme of this channel. Set yourself up for success. And so we don't want to talk about permaculture in a way that glamorizes it and minimizes the real costs of it. Permaculture is not low effort, period. I don't care what other people say, it's not low effort. Is permaculture accessible? It should be. Is permaculture something that you can incrementally step into? It should be. Is permaculture labor saving in the long run? Yes, if you do it right. Is permaculture something that you can access at whatever your ability level is, be that your physical ability, your time commitment, your budget? Absolutely. But that doesn't make it low effort. So I will say, if you are interested in engaging in permaculture, you should be able to step into it where you're at in a way that feels doable for you. You don't want to have to overextend yourself to do permaculture. So let's quickly just kind of break down this myth into a couple of chunks and debunk it a little bit. This myth that permaculture is low effort. And then let's finish with a few, I hope, encouraging truths at the end. So number one, this whole idea that taking your yard that is either just lawn or weeds or, sand or clay and making it into a permaculture oasis is not work, that it's low effort. What a bunch of hooey. I easily spend 10 to 15 hours a week in the garden. I could spend more. And at the beginning, I spent a lot more than that. When you are taking a landscape that has been assaulted and stripped of its fertility, when you are taking a landscape that has been poisoned, when you are taking somewhere that has had all of the organic matter either eroded away or removed, when you are talking about healing a section of land, a plot of land, that is real work. And because permaculture is not just planting a garden, because it is about healing the planet, because it is about healing the land on which we live and returning it to fertility and abundance, it's more work than a regular garden at the beginning. Because we are going through the process of planting food, but we're also going through the process of healing for a long-term benefit. So no, permaculture is not no work at the beginning, and it's not low effort. It's more effort than a traditional garden in my experience. And another thing that makes it more effort is because permaculture is a design system. So we are not doing things willy-nilly. We're not doing things in accordance with the directions on the back of a box of fertilizer. We are taking time and using our mental energy to observe and interact and design a really good plan that will, over the long run, reduce labor. So initially, we are front loading the work of educating ourselves, of learning the process of permaculture design. We are front loading the work of carefully planning our landscape and making sure that the design that we have is going to be effective at doing the work of healing the land. So that is a huge amount of cognitive effort, of mental energy, and of time. And then to implement that design is then another layer. So for me, I'm not just tilling up a plot of land and planting veggies. I am thinking about all of the interconnectedness in the landscape. And I'm thinking about, if I plant this comfrey behind me, how is it affecting the plants around it? How's it affecting the wildlife? What benefits is it bringing? What kind of care does it need? I am spending all of this energy looking for all of the connections and thinking about how that will impact my design. And that is not low effort. There is so much physical work to permaculture, especially if you have a large plot of land and you're doing things like earthworks, or building ponds, or if you are doing things like building structures, or if you are having to really radically reshape your landscape. Planting trees is a lot of work, especially if you want to do it in a way that fully supports the tree. But that does not in any way diminish the mental work that it takes to do permaculture, because we're looking at intelligent design for our landscape so that it is effective in the long term. So initially, permaculture is not low effort. It's a huge freaking amount of effort. But does that mean that if you don't have the mental and physical and financial wherewithal to expend a huge amount of energy doing what I do here, which is, a radical transformation of everything on my property, that you can't do permaculture? Absolutely not. If you want to plug in any way that you can plug in, permaculture design can work for you, because it's meant to be incremental. It's meant to build. It's meant to be accessible at whatever level that you can interact with it. So just because I am full bore, all in, that sort of is how my personality is. And it was impossible for me to want to do permaculture and not just add layers and layers and layers as I saw the complexity, as I saw the matrix and saw all the layers. But that doesn't mean that when you start out, it has to be that way. I started out just doing a whole summer's worth of just observing my garden and adding chickens. And that was it initially. Most of my effort was into observation initially. And then I slowly, as I had time and resources and energy level, I slowly added things to my garden. So initially I didn't have a rain garden. That was several years in, as I realized I needed a way to handle the water coming off our pergola, and I needed a way to funnel water better into my annual veggie beds. So I'm adding those layers of complexity over time. I didn't have bees for years and years. I've added them. This year we've added turkeys. So I don't want you to think that because you can't just do the big, like Angela, radical way of approaching permaculture, that you can't do permaculture. You can stack those functions, but you can also just stack your level of interest as it grows and as your energy and budget allow. So you can make permaculture less effort, and that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Approaching permaculture at whatever level will give you success is the right level to be approaching it. You don't want permaculture to be overwhelming. I think that's why this meme says permaculture is low effort, because they want it to feel accessible, but I feel that is selling somebody an unrealistic picture of permaculture initially. So it's not low effort, but it can be whatever level of effort you are willing to give, but then adjust your expectations for what your yields are. It's a noisy day in the neighborhood. It's garbage day. It's recycle day. We'll give the trucks a second to pass. Is permaculture low effort as time goes on? I have a video where I talk about how permaculture, especially if you're doing food forest design, can be kind of self-sustaining. You can get to a point where the system can really take care of itself. And if there is a period of neglect because you have health issues, because of your work, because of something going on in your life, that a good permaculture design allows you to come back in and quickly tidy up and rehab. Maybe you need a little pruning, maybe you need a little mulching, maybe you need some chop and drop as things have overgrown the path, but that the system doesn't need a lot of hand holding once it has reached maturity. I still stand by that. I've had some significant health issues. I've had some significant injuries. I've had significant periods where I've had to caretake for other folks. And there has been a measure of, as I like to say, benign neglect in my garden. And I found because I use permaculture design, it's not actually that hard to come in and kind of just like whip things back into shape. Again, so that is like maybe a little bit of low effort, if that's what the meme wants to say. But that doesn't mean that as time goes on, that the effort that you front load in the beginning into designing, into planting, into doing earthworks, it doesn't mean that effort totally goes away over time. Yes, you are front loading work. Yes, you are making an investment in setting up a careful system that will cycle fertility, that will build fertility, that will reduce waste, and that will create more habitat for wildlife and more abundance in your garden over time. So in that way, we are building up the system instead of draining it, so the system becomes more productive over time. So in that way, it is less work. It is less effort. But as I mentioned on the Facebook post, you then have the good problem, not a bad thing at all, of a highly productive system that is caring for itself and is producing abundantly. So I have found for me, as the years have gone on, my initial front-loading work was in design. It was in building soil, which is a constant job. It was in planting. Now, in my 14th year, what I find is that my work mostly consists of pruning, harvesting large yields, and processing the yield. So you're sort of swapping out jobs. And for me, I love to cook. I love to can. I love being out in the garden picking things. Like, that's so rewarding. To fill a big basket full of pears and bring it in and make pear sauce is really rewarding for me. But that is work, and it does take time. So unless you want your fruit to rot on the tree, you have to understand that you're kind of swapping one job for another as time goes on. So it's still effort, but maybe it's a joy rather than a task. You still have work in the end. It's just the kind of job that you're doing changes over time. So it changes very much from planting to harvesting. You are starting to produce a yield in your system, and your yield will probably get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. I've talked about how sometimes I'm worried about what will happen when I don't have 4 children, 3 ravenous teenagers, and a ravenous preteen. What will I do with all of the abundance? How will I utilize it? That is where the work transitions to as time goes on. So I don't want this video to be discouraging to anybody. I just don't want us to get kind of a fantasy picture of permaculture, because permaculture is about real systems that have a real impact and really work. And when we say things like, it's no work, and it's just romping in your Eden garden, and it's just plucking things off the tree and, as you walk around and enjoying them. No, man, it's work. And it's a really rewarding kind of work. And it is a necessary work if we're going to push toward a post-carbon regenerative future for all of humanity and for the planet. It is important work, and it is an investment that, if we're willing to make it now, will yield dividends for our offspring and for future generations all the way down the road, and for wildlife. So let's just kind of redact this section here that says that permaculture is low effort. And let's really embrace what kind of work we're getting into. Let's go into it with our eyes open. Let's go into it with the knowledge that we are engaging in a really worthy and rewarding kind of work. And that if the labor is something that we really enjoy, like, gosh, working outdoors in nature all day, interacting with my bees and my ducks and my chickens, watching all of the wildlife in my garden, feeling the satisfaction of an abundant harvest coming out of my garden, that I know that I helped facilitate that harvest happening, that is so rewarding that it doesn't feel like work. But it is a time commitment. It does take energy. It does take a physical body that is able to do it. So let's chuck that notion of permaculture as low effort at the door. Let's embrace the real kind of work that it is, accept the worthiness of that work, and dive into it in a way that is approachable for us at a level at which we can engage and see success. Thank you for watching today. Please check out my Patreon down in the description, and I will be back tomorrow from my garden here in Portland, Oregon. Thanks.